at eWater, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar. The title is Water by Design Update Music Guideline from Living Waterways version 2.0, and also there will be some information on street tree modeling and wicking bed design. Before we get started, I'll just go over a few items so you know how to participate in this webinar. If you want to listen by phone, please just select telephone in the audio pane, and then dial-in information will be displayed to the right of your screen. If you have the opportunity, you will have the opportunity to submit some text questions to both Adrian and Glenn. And if you will type your questions into the pane on the right, we will do them during the presentation, and then we will ask the presenters these questions. You can send your questions at any time during this presentation, and the Q&A session will be at the end. So thank you very much for showing up, and please join me in welcoming Adrian Crocetti and Jen from the Waterways organization. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to move it over to Adrian and Glenn.
Lovely, thanks, Miha. My name's Adrian Crocetti.
And I'm Glenn Browning.
And we're going to run through our presentation. So that's us, out and about. We're part of Water by Design. So we were formerly part of Healthy Land, and we are part of Healthy Land and Water. We're one of their initiatives, and it was formerly known as Healthy Waterways, who also merged with SE Qld catchments. Where we do a lot of waterway modelling. We bring out these Queensland report cards. We have the awards night, and we also run other NRM programs. So Water by Design is a sub-brand dealing with the WSID capacity building, and we write a lot of guidelines, and we run different training programs, including erosion sediment control and other WSID items. So Healthy Land and Water, what do we do? So we run lots of different initiatives, from community and education, working with councils in planning and development. We do science and research, and then we also have our report card. We now have the go-to zone drink dispensers that you can hire for events or permanently put in your place of work. And we also do a clean-up program in the Brisbane River and other bits and pieces around the place. So some of our feature projects that we've been working on lately and are just about to hit the pavement is the update of the music guidelines. We've got a new Living Waterways framework, which is Living Waterways 2.0, and passive irrigation guidance. So basically, the Living Waterways framework was released in 2010.
That's the music.
Oh, the original music guidelines were released in 2010, produced by Paul Dabowski and Alan Hoban, with review from Sean Linster, Tony Webber, and Eleanor.
Yep, forget her last name.
Okay. It's been updated to, the new guidelines been updated to cater for changes made to version 6, and work's also been done by Jack Mullally and Karen Toms. The release has been stalled for a little bit while we looked at a number of issues that were being sorted out, and we also wanted to add in the street tree information as well. So we're going to release an interim guideline, which will release until Music X is released, and it's only awaiting final sign-off, and we're hoping it will be out by early November.
Okay, I can give some more background on the guidelines. So the new version really aims to be a bit more user-friendly. We've got a lot of sketches and diagrams to try and illustrate some of the parameters that new users to music may not be familiar with. One good example was the rainwater tank, the area above the overflow. So that's kind of hidden and not always visible to everyone. So yeah, we've got a lot of sketches show. So a couple of things that is in version 6 is the use of secondary flow links. So we've got a bit of guidance around that, how to use the links for high flow bypass, low flow pipe and weir outlets. So that's a really useful functionality that we are looking to promote, I guess. A little bit of informal advice that we had out there regarding the TN and TP content. We've also put in into the guidelines, and that's regarding filter media. So yeah, so we've basically refreshed the guidelines, and it looks a lot more attractive now. No sort of criticism of the past guideline, and looks a lot sleeker. Okay, so one of the new features is, I guess the major change is a change to the, and this really came from research by the guys at Design Flow, and they've researched the water quality data coming off some of the wetlands up here in southeast Queensland, and they saw a trend that the wetlands up here were producing much better concentrations. And so yeah, they've gone back to the original K and C star values in that are defaults in the music model, and looked at the research there, and one of the things that it could be attributed to is the difference in temperature between the original default, which was based on a wetland in Melbourne, I believe, and the temperature difference up here in the subtropics. So with the warmer climate, the bugs in the wetland do a better job of breaking down the nutrients and pollutants. So we've allowed for practitioners to modify the K and C star values for wetlands based on this research. We've also checked the new research with lots of our industry experts, Tony Webber from Alluvium, Brad Dalrymple, Leon Rollins as well. So yeah, we've got a bit of confidence around that. So it's one of the things that's going to change. Okay, so we've also just recently completed a street tree modelling study with the good folk at E2 Design Lab, and this study really aimed to model trees and optimize their performance to improve the health of the street trees. And so we've got some useful guidance on how you might model these street tree systems in music. So a little bit more on that later in the presentation though. Adrian will be running through the street trees. Okay, now important to mention that this guideline update was in part sponsored by the Whitsunday Regional Council, and they originally requested guidance on the rainfall periods that might be used up there, and also the rainfall runoff parameters. So we've included in the new guideline a bit of an appendix to account for the sort of northern Queensland differences. Yeah, so that's the new music guideline. I might just move on to the Living Waterways framework. So Living Waterways was first produced in 2014. It was originally created as a partnership between Water by Design, Lytana, Landscapeology and META. And it was a federally funded project under Reef Rescue. And yeah, we were really looking for a way to deliver multi-benefit projects. And so we saw the need to, as well as delivering water quality outcomes, to deliver outcomes that service the local communities, service the local ecology, and then service the economic needs as well. And so Living Waterways is broken into 4 components, basically water, environment, community, and economy. So we've recently updated the Living Waterways framework, and one of the key elements in it is resilience. And so we've had a real look at why resilience is important for water systems and how we might go about incorporating resilience into your standard stormwater management plans. Okay, so what can we do to make these systems resilient? Actually, first, why is resilience important? Well, with climate change, the temperatures increasing, the rainfall maybe decreasing, there's going to be chronic threats that happen to the local water systems. On top of that, we'll experience higher intensity rainfall events, and so we'll have flash flooding and things like that. All that creates acute and chronic pressures on the waterways and water systems. So this resilience concept is a way that our water systems can bounce back from these disturbances. And the Stockholm Resilience Centre has come up with 7 key principles on how you might create adaptive socio-ecological systems. And so part of that is creating systems that continually improve, and that relies on adaptive thinking. So all the time you're collecting data, diagnosing what might be wrong, crafting new solutions and implementing them. So that's the adaptive thinking. But there's also the governance and participation factors as well. So there's 7 of these principles that are important for resilience, and they're available on the Stockholm Resilience Centre's website, so I won't go into them too much, except to say they're there. And how have we applied this in Living Waterways? Well, we've evaluated each of the criteria in Living Waterways against these 7 principles, and points are accumulated for designs that satisfy each of these 7 principles. And so in that way, you can tell if you're creating the most resilient water-sensitive urban design outcome. Okay, we will move on to strategic planning. So another key element that's different in Living Waterways version 2 is strategic planning. And this is really recognizing that not all parts of the catchment are equal. In the CBD, you've got different pressures than out in rural landscapes. Just to give you an example, there's not much space in the CBDs, and there's a lot of people that can potentially benefit from public water features, whereas in rural environments, that's the reverse is true. So really, we need to think about what response we do for our WSID systems and cater them to the local context. Okay, so strategic planning, we've built this into the new Living Waterways framework. by I'll just slip to the next slide. By recognizing that the catchment isn't homogeneous, and so the risks that we face, well, the risks that the waterways face are not homogeneous. You've got new developing areas where there's a high concentration of sediments and pollutants, and then you've got more established areas where there's less of a concentration, and then you've got sort of natural areas as well where there's low to no concentrations of pollutants. And so really what the strategic planning module does is to allow WSIB practitioners to focus on these critical areas where there is a high value that aligns with a high hazard area. And at the same time, it allows WSIB practitioners to identify those areas where there might be a high value that is co-located with a high terrestrial value or a high community value or a high economic value. And so that way you can invest your funds in those sort of links between the high value waterways and high value environments. Okay, so and these areas are called critical adjacencies. Okay, so this new Living Waterways version 2 is available at the moment online as a beta version, and it's under that link. It's called hlw.org.au/Living Waterways, and you'll be able to go in and use it there. We are just about to release a proper online version, but I'll just talk you through some of the cool stuff that's in the beta version. So we've got a waterway diagnosis tool. So you answer a survey on what your waterway hazards are, what the current values are, and what opportunities are available. And it will help you diagnose what sort of treatment systems you might put in place. And so it evaluates the treatments on those 4 dimensions, so water, environment, social, and economic. And you can help visualize, I guess, how your waterway value might respond to those interventions. So some pretty neat stuff there. So we'd encourage people to have a look. And this is a bit of a sneak peek at the new online version. So users will be able to go in and create an account and then fill out a questionnaire and evaluate how their stormwater management plan really ticks off on all those 4 key elements: the water, environment, social, and economy. Okay, so I might pass back to Adrian for the street tree and wicking bed study. He has a background at Brisbane City Council in installing heaps of these trees. So yeah.
Okay, so so thanks, Glenn. We were madly cutting holes in sidewalks and putting Aggie pipes in around the gardens to try and work out whether the trees would benefit from getting a bit of water off the curb and channel. Most of the trees did really well, so there've been over 200 rolled out Brisbane City Council. Now, when I moved over to Healthy Land and Water, there was obviously other people doing different versions, and there are proprietary versions. So we thought it would be worth getting in there and really having a look at how we could potentially write some guidelines and provide information for you guys out there. So we got E2 Design Labs in, and they basically worked out optimal size of gardens, the right soil types, and those sort of things, those sort of parameters. Now, as you can see from the screen, we had 6 councils join in to the show and chip in a few bucks. And basically, we've modelled all their regions, because they invested, and now we've got a whole set of parameters for each of the regions on optimum soil size and those sort of things, those parameters. What have we got? The benefits are really quite obvious, a lot of them, but you know, they provide healthy growing environments. And what we have found is with the new studies is there is definitely some additional benefit from putting in the sub drainage or the outflow pipes, because if there's soil around those gardens don't drain freely, then yeah, they can be waterlogged. They sort of give your alternative water sources to keep the maintenance of the gardens cheaper, and they improve the resilience of the gardens, of the trees. They improve local microclimates, so they reduce the heat island effect, and they also mean that you don't have to put some potable water on the trees to keep them going most of the time. They help the downstream receiving environments. I don't like to call them mini biopods, but the water does enter at the top and go through the sand and the soil system and then come out the pipe at the bottom. They don't use the same soils as biopods, and that's why we try not to think of them that way. The soils are put in there to support the plant growth, not to improve the water quality. So they do improve the water quality, but probably not quite as much as biobasins. They reduce the demands on the existing stormwater networks by sending water through them rather than straight down the pipe, so they reduce those frequent flow spikes. And they also reduce the active irrigation needs and those costs of pipes and pumps, those sort of things. So it's just another treatment solution to biobasins, and it certainly could be used in large numbers along with other WUSID measures to help create the right music outcomes you're looking for in a development or a design system. So there you go, there's some pictures. So a standard tree, what we were finding in Brisbane City Council, a standard tree might last 10 to 15 years, and then because it had such a small area of soil for it to grow within, the roots became root bound and eventually stopped growing or even died. So if you add the right soil volume in, you'll get a lot more life out of the tree, and the tree will grow bigger and healthier. So then we started with the Brisbane City Council water smart trees, and we found just getting that water off the curb helped those trees grow that little bit more again. And certainly there are examples all over Brisbane now where the water smart trees are certainly outperforming the standard trees, or even those trees which have the right soil volume. Now the bio tree does have that sub-drainage component to it, so it does allow, if the catchment is sized right, and that's the other part of the study they've done, if the catchment's sized right, if the soil's right, the tree type's right, and you've got the sub-drainage in there, then you're certainly getting a big, healthy tree. And if you add those saturated zones in, then you'll get even better growth eventually, sort of like those self-watering plants that last one in that diagram's like. So here are some of the numbers that we spat out for the program from E2. So they looked at sandy loams, loamy sands, and they seem to be the best sort of soils. And then they looked at the surface area to the catchment area ratios. So, you know, you can see all those numbers for the different areas of Queensland. And those 6 areas cover most of the coastal climatic regions of the state. So it's really good. And most practitioners along the coastline in the GBR and SE Qd can certainly look at these 6 different sets of figures and find something that will be relative to what they're looking for, we hope. So here's the Cairns example. So some of them, the sandy loams aren't that way. You shouldn't be using them. It's too wet. You should go more for the loamy sands. and then they tell you the optimal catchment size, the target ratio area, and the size of the tree that you're putting in as well. So we've tried to keep it as simple as possible, and yeah, Sally and Dylan have done a good job sorting out those numbers. So then we go on to passive irrigation. I mean, this isn't new technology. I've seen different versions of it around the place over the last few years, but it really is a neat way of getting that water to where it's needed and keeping it there. I really worked a lot on stormwater harvesting over the last 6 to 10 years, and there are definitely merits to stormwater harvesting, and I believe these further enhance harvesting systems and are harvesting systems in themselves. So basically you get external catchments running into an area, and you use the area of the turf itself, and you set up a wicking system underneath to hold the water underneath, so that the grass roots can get to that water and really draw the water up and keep it green. The E2 guys did build one up in Gladstone, 1,000 square metre park on the foreshore there, and it's looking a treat. Every time I go to Nearmap, it's always green, and the surrounding areas go through different shades of brown usually, so it's really doing a good job. Here's a side on, here's a cross section of it. So the squiggly lines at the top is obviously the healthy turf, and then you've got 300 to 500 mils of sandy loam topsoil. And at the time, they really did try and source the right soils. There was certainly a lot of work gone into making sure the right blend of sandy loam was chosen. You don't want it too high in nutrients, and you don't want it sort of too clay, or it doesn't work quite as well. So basically, they run a heap of pipes in the bottom section. They have an impervious liner underneath it, and then they have inflow pipes that either run off the other catchments and cross the whole, transect the whole field. Then they run a pipe out and raised up, so it does have an overflow point if there is too much water, but it will hold that bottom dotted section, heavily dotted section, will hold that amount of water. And I believe they're getting, what, 60 to 80% efficiency out of the system that has been installed, and we're certainly keen to see some more go in, and we're happy to provide advice. So we have got some numbers from the E2 guys in the new information we're sending out that can help others to install a really good system. So these are the wicking lawns. So again, you look at the reliability. So you've got that lovely curve there on the back, on the left chart, and you can see the reliability decreases as the treatment catchment area increases. And then this is for cans, and then you look at the water quality to treatment and effectiveness. So you sort of want to sit in the range that you can do effectively and efficiently.
Okay, so just a quick plug for a Waterways street tree planting day. So we really want to promote this technology. We see it as low additional cost. You've got to put street trees in anyway. If you get in early while you're constructing a road, you can put the pipework in for just a little bit extra cost to enable these trees to be self-watering. So as part of this, the Water by Design program, we've got some funding to promote this this technology, and so we've got, I think, 5, 6 councils on board to get involved in a planting day. So we're going to all plant on the same day, hopefully 15th of November, and we'll be able to monitor the growth of these water smart street trees, and we'll be able to compare it to control trees, and hopefully we'll get a bit of science out of it too, and see how the different climatic regions can influence the growth of the trees. And so we'll look at 1 and 2 years down the track at awarding a street tree champion. So that's something that's coming up soon. And we'd encourage anyone in the southern states as well to possibly get involved if you like. We'll send you the details.
Okay, that's about us.
Yep. So just a bit of a wrap up. The 3 products to look out for: the music guidelines, that'll be early November. The Living Waterways version 2. We should have the website up there's already a beta version on the web, but we should have the proper online version in the coming weeks. And then the street tree planting day, 15th of November, is the critical date there. So, yeah.
So yeah, we'll send all this information through to eWater and get them to distribute it through their mailing lists as well, so you guys don't miss out on all this new and improved information that we've got coming out the doors in the next few weeks. So yeah, we're open up for questions now, and happy to go through anything you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, thank you very much, and Adrian. Very interesting and informative. We have one question in regards to the performance of wetlands. As you have said, the AC star values are considered to be somewhat different in subtropical areas such as Brisbane and further north compared to Melbourne, where the original research has been done. Is there any, do you feel there is any space or reason to look at how wetlands in Sydney and surrounding areas would perform? And mainly we would look at the Sydney area, and then further west in climates which are a little bit more extreme, and maybe also Canberra.
Yeah, well, certainly the research that we've seen in southeast Queensland, I think it was Nat Parker did some research in Coomera waters, and there's been a bunch of other studies as well. So the research we've seen has tended to point to these systems performing a little bit better in the tropics, and what we've equated that to is the increase in temperature. So the bugs are a bit more active, and they can chew through a bit more nitrogen and phosphorus than perhaps in southern states. And I guess my guess would be that in Sydney it would be somewhere. The results would be somewhere between Melbourne and Brisbane. So you'd expect to see a little bit of improvement on what you experience in Melbourne, but maybe not as good as Brisbane. And then certainly in the western areas, there may be a shift to I guess hotter conditions, perhaps, and so yeah, that would certainly influence. The other thing to take into account is the way the rainfall is distributed throughout the year. In certainly tropical Queensland, it's very it all comes in the summer months, and then up in Townsville, that you'll have 6 months on end where there's hardly any rain. So those sort of things will have an impact on the growth of plants, and that will have a very real impact on what sort of water quality measures, water quality results you see. Now, having said that, we don't have all the information for those regions, but yeah, there's certainly a few systems going up in Townsville, so hopefully we can get some monitoring data for there as well.
And another thing, we've also been talking with the wetlands guys from the state government, and they have shown that a wetland that in reality, it may not be easy to model in music, but in reality, wetlands that go through a dry phase certainly take up more nutrients than a constantly wet wetland. So an ephemeral wetland certainly has higher bacterial and nutrient action going on than something that's always wet. So that was interesting as well. So we're waiting to see the new information come out from them as well. So that's going to be up on their new website very soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. That was that was really good. I was just going to add, it would be interesting to see what happens in Canberra, because as you know, we have very, very hot summers, but also it gets a little bit cold and frosty in the winter. The one other question I have is in relation to the irrigated trees, and the question is, how do the passive irrigated trees perform in drier climates? We could look at maybe areas that are very dry, such as even Dabo, for example.
Well, so the studies that we did covered 6 regional centres, and probably the driest centre was Ipswich. And so Ipswich, if I remember correctly, has about 800 millimetres of rain a year. And if you compare that to, say, Sunshine Coast, which is 1,600 millimetres a year, there's quite a difference. So I guess what you'll see is that, in the western areas, there may be less water getting to these trees through the passive irrigation system. And so depending on your tree selection, if you've got a very thirsty tree, then you might need some additional irrigation through normal council maintenance, as opposed to just the passive irrigation. So that's what we could expect. And but having said that, you can design around those climatic conditions, and in Ipswich you just allow for a bigger catchment into these street tree systems. And so if you've got a bigger catchment coming in, then you've got more water, and you can cater for it that way. This street tree trial that we're doing, we hope to uncover a lot of valuable insights into how these systems perform throughout the state. And if there's any councils in Dubbo, for example, that might be interested in putting in these systems, then by all means join our planting day, and we'll be able to see how these systems do in the drier regions.
Thank you very much for that. Now, also a question about the tree pits. There have been some reports that the tree pits can suffer from maybe negative impact from gross pollutants and total solids. So some councils have noticed that while setting up the tree pits, they may have some trouble with all the gross that gather on top of the media, or block the water pathway into the tree pit, and therefore the tree does not get the water that it should, and it becomes a little bit of a maintenance problem from councils. Have you guys, do you have some suggestions or ideas about that?
Yes. Okay. So in the ones that we put in Brisbane City Council, basically, when they go and water the trees, they still have a maintenance regime that all of the trees in Brisbane on the streets, they will put the hose that they irrigate the trees with into the pipe that's cut into the curb and channel, and really give it a blast of water. Now, not only does that push out the sediment and gross pollutants, but it also sends the water to where the tree wants it, into the root zone. So if you water a tree on the surface, it tends to want to bring the roots up to the surface, so the pipes help draw the water down. So that's not answering the question, but the way to help clean it out is to blow water through the pipe. And the other way is, there's more than a couple of ways. There's another way where they put a porous plug in the mouth of the pipe where it exits the curb and channel. So they were using soft fall material like crushed rubber tire that they had glued together as to turn it into a sort of plug, a leaky plug, so to speak. That has kept all of the gross pollutants and most of the sediments out and keeps the pipes operating properly. The other way to do it is to actually cut the curb out in its entirety. So all of the sediment and all the gross pollutants will collect around the base of the tree. So there are no pipes going into the tree, but they do use a saturated zone at the bottom instead. And so they cut out maybe 300 to 400 mils of the curb and cut it at 45 degrees and leave the tree slightly lower. So all the water running past enters there, and some of the guys working in the field say they quite like it because that's where all the bottles and cans naturally go, and they can go to one location all the time to pick them out just from around the trees, so long as they have a regular maintenance regime for those streets. So they were some of the ways of improving that. We did originally try grates and different techniques early on in Brisbane City Council, but they did block up the leaf litter, and different items did block up the mesh sort of grates that we were trying. So that's why we went for more of the open pipe and then using the little plugs in the pipe. And when we release the guidelines, we'll give examples of those sort of techniques to stop those things from blocking up.
Much that actually is very good information because we did have some reports of councils being a little bit unhappy with their treatments because of the issues of blockage and of,
Yes.
of gross pollutants and TSS gathering in the area
In the pipe.
So yes, either in the pipe or sometimes use them with an EDD, and everything got blocked in the EDD. In the detection there. There's another question, and also about the tree pits. Seems like this is a very hot topic. The question is asking if the tree pits systems are connected to potable supplies of water to cover the wet and dry seasons. You have kind of covered on to when you talked about the maintenance people that come in and fix up the trees, but I guess some more information was requested. Is there any system where these tree pits are actually connected to an actual water supply pipe or something of the sort?
There would be no reason you couldn't connect them to a water supply pipe, and to make it even better, you could have a soil moisture probe in there, so it only released water when the soil moisture got to a certain level. But that certainly adds extra cost and complexity to the job. But there would be no reason why you couldn't set up a simple or an advanced irrigation system around the trees to supplement the water. We were looking at some of the street trees in the beautiful Rockhampton Main Street, and they were elevated trees. So in fact, they probably wouldn't have been able to use some of this technology. And we sort of considered maybe having other tanks hidden behind buildings or up on roofs that could just flow into the gardens when they so needed it, or have little solar pump systems. When the gardens got dry, you just flick the pump on and watered the garden. So there would be no reason why you couldn't supplement the Waterways street trees with an irrigation system. Now, because Brisbane has a ongoing deal with the guys who manage the trees, all of the trees are looked at every couple of weeks, and they have their soil moisture taken, I think, every couple of months, and they get watered every 2 to 4 weeks if it's really dry in Brisbane. So they certainly, in extended dry periods, none of these systems are going to work unless you've got that sort of alternative secondary, be it potable or alternative water supply to help that tree come along, especially while it's establishing. Some of the bigger, more sturdy, hardy trees will survive through extended dry periods, but most of them like a drink if it isn't raining.
Yeah, and just to sell the technology a little bit more, there's been some research on the economics of street trees, and they've found that the house prices can actually increase by $20,000 per house if you've got a decent, mature street tree. So, yeah, if you haven't already got something on the footpath, maybe invest in something. And the other thing is that they've looked at the quality of canopy for street trees with adequate soil versus the concrete coffin trees that you might see in a car park. And you can, just by having that adequate soil and catchment area, you can increase the canopy by, I think it was between 5 and 12 times. So it's quite remarkable.
So yeah, the economic information that Glenn was talking about was Dr. Lyndall Plant, and she's based out at UQ, and she's done a few studies. And if you go to the 2020 vision, I believe all her information is up on there. So thanks, Lyndall.
For that extra information.
Any more questions?
As the tree pits prevent the tree roots from going up. No, that's pretty much
okay. Well,
it.
Is that a wrap then?
From our end. Thank you very much, Adrian and Glenn.
Okay,
much for that. And any questions about you guys? Hello?
Yep.
So yeah, if any of the attendees have any questions about Adrian and Glenn's presentation, feel free to send an email to adrian@SE Qld. If you have any questions about music, please feel free to email us at support@iwala.org.au. I would like to thank again Adrian Crocetti and Glenn Brown for taking the time out of their busy day to present what they're doing and bring us up to speed with what's happening in Southeast Queensland, and obviously their organization, Healthy Land and Water Initiative, for this webinar. Thank you guys, and hope you have a great day, and yeah, thanks again.
Thank you very much. We hope